Hello, fellow book nerds, this is Gabby and welcome to yet another reading vlog. This time we're reading Eastern European inspired fantasies. So, if you don't know, I'm Polish. Poland is technically Central Europe. I never really felt like I was Central European. I'm Eastern European. Poland has a lot of culture and customs and mythology in common with other Eastern European countries. They're heavily inspired by Russian mythology and Slavic mythology in general. So I thought for the spooky season of October and the fall vibes, well, maybe not very spooky, but for fall vibes, and when I think fall, I think forests and beautiful leaves falling down and kind of winter starting, and I think Eastern European mythology folklore just has this amazing autumn fall vibe. I've been postponing this video for a while just because the timing was never right, but I've had the books for a while, and I think I just really want to make this video because I don't read that many Eastern European inspired fantasies, so I don't really see my language or the names of places and people reflected that much, or my mythology and folklore that I grew up knowing. I don't really see that reflected in any of the books I read because they're very Western, and I think if you're not from a country like America or England, you don't really get to see your culture expressed very commonly unless it's a book talking about that experience of culture. So that's why it's so amazing we're getting way more books by people of color and from different cultures all around the world writing in English or being translated. But I know that for me there's not a lot of famous Polish people, so I hold it very dearly if there is someone, especially if someone's written a book. So these are not all Polish authors that we're going to be reading, but they're all borrowing from that Slavic folklore, and I'm really excited because I already started one of the books. I know I'm loving it already. All of these are very hyped on booktube, but I've never read them, so you get to see my experience firsthand, and hopefully we can discuss some folklore and some more culture things that I noticed. So let's look at the books. So I'm going to be reading Uprooted by Naomi Novik, The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden, and Wiedźmin or The Witcher by Andrzej Sapkowski. I believe these two were written in English originally, and this one actually was written in Polish. The Witcher is very popular right now. There's a TV series that's just come out and there's video games. Everyone knows Witcher. I decided to just read it in the original language because I feel like that's going to be more accurate and true experience. Folklore and Eastern European stories always make you feel so cozy and just want to get under a blanket, get some tea and just experience it. Hope it'd be perfect if there was snow outside, but there isn't. I live in England. Without further ado, let's kick this off.
Once upon a time, there was a tower, and within it lived the most powerful wizard in all of Polnia, who they called the Dragon. The dragon protected the neighboring villages from the frightful wood, which corrupted the villagers' hearts and brought destruction upon the land. However, the dragon expected a terrible price for his protection. One girl taken every 10 years to his lonesome tower. In one of the villages, there was a girl called Agnieszka. She thought herself nothing special if you didn't count her ability to get into trouble. She knew that her dearest friend Kasia would be the girl taken. After all, her beauty and skill could not be matched in all of the land. On the day of the choosing, however, Dragon set his eyes on Agnieszka. She was to be taken to the tower and taught the mystic ways of the wizard.
So the first book we're going to be reading is Uprooted by Naomi Novik. Naomi Novik is an immigrant. I think she currently lives in the US, but her mother's family is Polish and her father's family is Lithuanian. So this book is definitely heavily inspired by Polish mythology and Polish culture, like she herself said. I can definitely see the Polish influences, even the names like Agnieszka, Kasia, Marek, they're all very Polish names. Their spelling is exactly like the Polish spelling, and there's been cultural references. For example, there was the Baba Yaga, which is like a popular Slavic, like a witch type figure. And then we also have the 100 years birthday song. So in Poland, we don't sing happy birthday to you, but we do a song that's just basically goes 100 years, hope you live for us, something like that. So that's very accurate, and I really love seeing this. So I'm actually 200 pages in, over 200 pages in, because I couldn't put it down. I started it yesterday and I was just so in love, and it feels like every chapter ends on something so interesting that I just gotta pick up the next chapter, just gotta keep going. I love seeing all the references, seeing the 100 Years song just made me so happy, and just seeing everyone's names and all that. There are some things that I'm very like confused about, I guess, in terms of the use of language. Like I said, all the names are pretty accurate. So like Agnieszka or Kasia, they're Polish names, they're spelled right. A lot of things is clearly meant to be inspired by like Polish words, but then also kind of like other spellings are mixed into it. For example, in Poland we don't use the V, but there's several words with the V, or like the letter Y in very random weird places that we would never put it. I don't know what this language is supposed to be. I know that it's not supposed to be Polish per se. It just feels weird because there's certain names like Agnieszka, there's no change, but then her nickname is Agnieszka, but it's spelled improperly. We would never spell it with an SH. Since her long name is spelled properly, it just feels very unnatural to me that it would be then spelled improperly, especially since you're just taking the last part of her name. I guess these decisions just feel a little bit random, so I'm trying to find a pattern that I understand, but I'm not finding it. But otherwise, I am really enjoying seeing the Polish influences. There's not really a direct myth or folklore part that I feel like it's referencing. I mean, it's obviously referencing Baba Yaga, and I'm not sure how her story is gonna link into it. I think that her other book, Spinning Silver, is supposed to be a Rumpelstiltskin retelling, which I'm so excited for that because I really like the story of Rumpelstiltskin ever since I saw Once Upon a Time. I'm really confused if this book is young adult or adult, because there's so things like almost a sex scene. I just checked this, so it says it's both classified as adult and new adult and young adult, so we like consistency. I finished Uprooted and I loved it. It was so good. I just devoured the last like over 100 pages. Absolutely loved it. Just could not put it down. I think it's an amazing book. I give it 5 stars, and I'm so excited to read more from Naomi Novik, especially Spinning Silver, as well as I want to give Deadly Education a chance because I really loved this. So something that I particularly loved was the writing style. I think it was really beautiful and quite emotive. It was evoking emotions, but not overdoing it either. Sometimes I feel like the beautiful writing style of what we consider beautiful is very convoluted, and it can feel a bit disjointed or not authentic, but this was beautiful in a way that still allowed for it to be easy to read, and yeah, it just didn't feel overtly complicated for no reason. Additionally, I really loved how magic was described in this. It's very real and tangible because she describes it as a forest and her trying to find a way within a forest, or her building a sandcastle and her putting more mud here to build a sandcastle, and it's just very emotive and very beautiful. Sometimes magic, when it's described on a page, it's hard to comprehend because it's kind of hard to write well, but she really describes it in a way that makes us feel like we're part of it. We're seeing the magic grow, we're seeing the spell evolve and build, and it's really beautiful. So I really enjoyed that part. Additionally, I was surprised how action-packed it was. I was really expecting this to be more of a slow story with them spending many years in the tower, growing, getting to know each other, you know, like a really slow one. But no, this is like action after action after action. It was really well executed because it was fast-paced but still kept me engaged, and I still really knew the characters well. Oh, I want to mention that there is a content warning for attempted sexual assault. It's not the main love interest, don't worry, because I could not get on board that ship, but it's someone else, but just good to be aware of it. But the main relationship I think was so well executed. There is quite a graphic sex scene, so I wouldn't really say this is young adult. I think this is more of an adult novel because it's described in detail, like kind of like Saturday Mass, but like better. I really thought the romance was just peak, like so good, and I was really anxious at the end, but it kind of ended how I was hoping it would end, so I'm really happy. And I think it just, the mythology created in this story is really beautiful as well. Like I said, not direct borrowing, but the way the mythology of this world works and how Naomi Novik built this from ground up. Standalone novel that's only about 400 pages. I am so impressed with how well she executed the world and how well she tied up the story and how well she fleshed out the characters, considering it's a standalone. I feel like that's a bit hard to do. It does have that fairy tale-esque feel to it. I've read some other books that felt more like fairy tales. This felt like a little bit of a fairy tale, but also just like a fast-paced novel. Like I said, I feel like if it had that slow sitting in a room together vibe, then that would really feel like a fairy tale. I think that pretty much covers everything I wanted to say, but I absolutely loved it. I was really shocked how much I loved it, but I couldn't put it down. I just kept wanting to read, and I would highly recommend it. 5 stars from me, and I'm definitely picking up more Naomi Novik.
Once upon a time, there lived a witcher named Geralt of Rivia. He spent his days traversing the kingdoms in search of monsters. He encountered many beasts from Kikimoras to Strigas and lay waste to them all. And in the Valley of Plenty, everyone knew that you have to toss a coin to your witcher.
I am almost 200 pages into The Last Wish by Andrzej Sapkowski, and I have thoughts. So I actually checked, and I started this book 4 years ago. I got 42 pages in. I hated the writing so much, I abandoned it completely. I struggled a bit with writing this time around as well, especially when I started. It just felt like I was not getting anywhere. I'm reading it in Polish, so I thought it'd be like a breeze. It's not a breeze. The book was written in 1993, but it reads a little bit, but then I pushed through and now I'm really enjoying it. I've been flying through, that's why I haven't updated you, because it's only been like 2 days and I'm already 2 days ahead of my schedule. So the first book in the Witcher series is just collection of short stories, so it's all short stories that are kind of connected together through this thread of Geralt having to recover from an injury he got. Geralt is the Witcher, and it's just kind of remembering all these stories and meeting the characters, and then it kind of shows you where they met or shows you a thought he had about whatever stories. Now I realized that the series is very closely following this book, because most of the stories we saw there were from this book, except for the parts about like Yennefer and Ciri, because those parts aren't really here. It's all about Geralt. All but one of the stories were in the TV series, so the only story that wasn't there was the one kind of Beauty and the Beast retelling. So that's another thing about this book. There's not a direct like retelling, but they take a lot of the old fairy tales, like Brother Grimm's fairy tales, like Sleeping Beauty, Snow White, Beauty and the Beast, and they take all of those and kind of make them even darker, and the originals were dark, like watch Messed Up Orders if you want to know how dark. But now it's kind of like making them more human and like less fantastical, I guess. But it's not like the main part of the story either. Just kind of in the background we'll hear that there was a princess who ran away from a ball and lost her shoe because the guy was so persistent. And yeah, there's a lot of talk about sexual assault. It hasn't been like very explicitly shown on the page, but there has been a lot of talk about it, and they are treating women a little bit questionably in that sense. The main character doesn't condone it and he doesn't do it himself, and he's like disgusted by it, but there is a lot of other people doing it. I feel like because these are all short stories, I can't really talk about the plot that much because there isn't one really. I am intrigued, like I want to, because I've watched the TV show first, so I know pretty much all the resolutions to all the all the short stories. So I'm curious to continue and read more of the story and finally go beyond the TV show so I can see the proper plot, because I think there's another book that's like the second book in the series and that's also short stories. So I'm ready to move past the short stories, but I'm not minding it as much as I thought because I'm not normally a huge fan of that. Just now there seems to be kind of a thread of Geralt feeling like the world's moving on from the need for witchers and the need from him, and I'm really liking the exploration of that, just how he feels like there used to be so much work and now he's kind of coming into oblivion, and how the witchers are really not that needed anymore because the world is really progressing. And I can really see a lot of threat of like, you know, industrialization and the technological advancement and how much we moved away from what the world used to be and how much different it is. So that's definitely also a thread there. All in all, I'm really enjoying it. I'm gonna keep reading and hopefully I can finish it soonish because it become quite easy to read now that I gotten used to it. But yeah, I think that's the only thing. Like the writing style is not blowing me away by any means. It's not very beautiful. There's almost no internal thoughts, like literally no internal thoughts. Everything's conveyed in dialogue, so we don't really get to know the main character that well. Like I feel like I know his essence, but I still don't really know his inner thoughts and his inner driving, all of that, because it's mostly just told by other characters being like, oh, you're so honorable, blah 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 blah, or him telling other characters something so you can like deduce what it is, but you can't really, he's not really telling you on the page, which it's not a complaint, it's just like a different writing style, and I'm enjoying getting to know Geralt in this very direct way through his actions. I'll be curious to see how the translation is, because I'm reading in original language, it's not very ornate already, so I don't know if the English people would make it more ornate or less ornate. I got some new pretty bookmarks. We have Alex from the Ninth House, the girl from My Sister's Exorcism, and Wilder Girls. And this is from the shop. Perfect for Halloween. I finished The Last Wish, The Witcher book, and I really enjoyed it. I have absolutely no other thoughts than I had before. I enjoy it. I don't like the writing. I gave it 3 stars because I think once I read the proper story, it could be like a 4 or maybe even a 5 if it's a really good one. No, maybe a 4, maybe a 4. But this was just like short stories that I already knew what was happening. I feel like sometimes if I didn't know what was happening, I would have been very confused. I enjoyed it. I would recommend. It had a lot of Brothers Grimm fairy tale reference, and even talked about genie. About genies. I don't know, Gene.
Once upon a time, there lived a girl named Vasya. She was a wild little thing, prone to disappearing in the forest and causing mischief in her little house in the northern piece of Russia. Vasya was a special girl, for she could sense the magic lurking in the forest and converse with the spirits living within it. However, her magical world gets disrupted with the arrival of her stepmother and the hard hand of the church.
I am 150 pages into The Bear and the Nightingale, and I'm really loving it. I'm loving it so much, and I'm so happy. I'm really loving how complex it is. Just like there's so many different threads woven together, because we don't follow just one character, but we follow pretty much anyone. It's kind of like an omnipotent, I would say, narrator. It's not really, it's like third person, but we can follow pretty much anyone. So we know kind of different characters, what they're doing, even if they're different places. I'm really enjoying this because there's not this very strong connection to one character, which sometimes can be great, but I feel like sometimes if you kind of go out of that and explore a little bit more about different characters, and then you don't just very strongly attach yourself to just one character, it can really expand the world and make the story seem so intricate and really woven together, and I really enjoy that. It is definitely that kind of story. We sometimes follow Vasya, we sometimes follow Vasya, sometimes we follow the priest, sometimes we go and follow the Tsar in the capital. So it's really just, we get so many perspectives, and actually the first couple chapters is focused on the family of Vasya before she even gets born, so we get to meet her mother who died in childbirth. It's just really cool. I really enjoy hearing from her family. I feel like I know everyone a little bit better. I think even the stepmother we really understand her way better, because we follow her and we know where she's coming from. We know she's not just like a really wicked, awful person who's really jealous, but she has all these demons literally and figuratively following her, and she's just so scared, and she's really young, and she got married off to this like old lord, and all of a sudden she has to be a mother, although this is not very explored, but we can kind of deduce. And so far there hasn't been that much magic. I feel like that's coming because we haven't really left her house yet. I think that's really coming very soon, and I'm really excited about meeting, I assume, the bear, because she's probably the Nightingale, and there's been a couple of glimpses of him. I like tabbed all of them and I think it's gonna be really exciting to learn more. So far it's very mysterious, really interesting. The magic in this, it's not really like, ooh, we're casting spells, more like we're seeing all these magical creatures. So I don't know where that's going as well, because Vasya so far is only like 14 and she's not trained or anything. It's really it's beautifully written, but somehow so easy to read. I don't really understand how that works. Normally when something really beautifully written, I have a bit of an issue with just like getting through it quickly, but this reads so quick. I feel like I picked it up 3 times. I'm at 150 pages, and none of those times I was like, okay, we're sitting down and rereading because I have to get through it. I was just like, oh, let me just open it and read a couple pages, and I just couldn't put it down. I was so entranced by it. So I'm really loving it. This is really heavily like Russian inspired, as opposed to maybe before when I was talking about Uprooted. This was more of a Polish mythology. This is really Russian inspired. So I just checked, and Catherine Arden is not Russian, nor does she have Russian roots, as far as quick Wikipedia Google told me, so I might be wrong, but apparently she spent a year in Moscow after high school, so I guess that was a very strong inspiration for her, and that's probably where she got her knowledge of like Russian folklore and stuff. There's a lot of Russian names. I watched the Meg's video about her read along for this, and like she said, there's like a whole glossary at the end explaining all the Russian folklore and words. Most of them a little I'm really well versed in, because there's some words, dziewoszka, dziewuszka, Baciuszka, like all those sound very similar to Polish words, especially where I live, because it's really close to the eastern border, so it has way more Russian like inspired. I'm so excited to keep continuing. It's so good, you guys. Like, really feels amazing. I feel like I should be just in the middle of winter under my blanket with little candles and just like, yeah, I just wanted to snow. I feel like Uprooted felt very autumnal, very fall vibes. This is winter vibes 1000%. And then VHB you kind of can read anyway. I'm babbling now, so I'm gonna go. Bye.
Bastia is not the nightingale, the bear isn't the love interest, and my whole life, or assumptions, have been a lie.
That was so good. Pure art. 5 out of 5. So good. Suffice to say, I really loved it. I finished The Bear and the Nightingale, and I think it was a wonderful, magical story that I really enjoyed, and I would highly recommend. I think it's way slower than I expected. The thing that people say what the synopsis is doesn't really happen till like maybe this much into the book, and this is the beginning. It really just happens towards the end of the book, so that's something to be aware of. The book is slow, and it will take its time to really make sure you know the motivations of the characters, and you see Vasya grow up, and everything just has this feeling of foreboding. I really enjoyed that. I did not mind at all. I think it was so beautiful, and the prose just made it so easy to get through, and all of the magic in it is very subtle kind of magic. It's more magic exists outside. We're not really throwing spells here, but it's still really wonderful. I enjoyed all the discussions and like kind of the discussion around church. In the synopsis I said that her stepmother comes, and so does the church, and we have Father Constantine who comes to be the priest in their little church, and he really sows doubt and fear into people because he believes that fear is the only way to make sure that they repent and go to heaven. So he has good intentions, I guess, but his way to go is fear, and there's so much fear mongering. For example, he says, repent lest you burn, the fire is very near, it is waiting for you and for your children each time you lie down to sleep. Give your fruits to God and God alone. It is your only salvation. And there's so many passages where they just talk about fear and the necessity of fear to make people good. And this fear is really what drives them away from the old ways, because the priest just keeps telling them to repent and to fear the God, and that they're basically gonna burn in hell. It's like it's Christianity in this. It's not an imaginary religion or anything. Well, and I think it says a lot about the actual fear mongering that goes on in church. Everyone has the right to believe whatever they do believe, but I think that the church as an institution is reflected to an extent accurately, or just starting the conversations. This is quite exaggerated because we are living in like whatever century Russia, I'm not actually sure, but it's like a long time ago, so of course it was exaggerated and all that. Back then everyone was like, oh, what if you did something weird, right? So I think that was portrayed very well. The discussions around church I think are quite interesting, and I'm really interested to see where it goes forward, because Vasya herself, she believes in God and she's religious, but she just has a completely different approach to it. So I think the nuance there is really important. The nuance is like the thing in this book. There's a lot of it, and like I said before, you get to hear from all of the characters. You really understand where the people are coming from, even when they're garbage. I don't like Father Constantin, but he really believes in what he says. He's not just like there for the money or there to like get off on fame or whatever. He really believes that the God is speaking to him, and he believes that God wants this, and he believes he's saving these people. Same for the stepmother. She believes that these are devils that she sees, not magical creatures, because no one told her otherwise. Kind of see where she's coming from. There is some questionable things. I mean, it is I feel like it's really authentic to the culture at the time it's trying to present. There's a lot of gross talk, there's a lot of weird age gaps, there's a lot of sexualization of like teens. Even the priest has hot fuzz Vasya. It's not like super obvious, but I mean it's obvious towards the end, but it's like quite subtle at the beginning, but you're just like, it leaves this sour taste in your mouth and it's a little bit icky. But at the same time, I feel like it's very true and very adult discussion to have. And even the age gap between the father and the stepmother is like really big. I think she's maybe in her like late teens, maybe early 20s, but I think she's less than 20 years old when she joins him to marry him. And he has like 5 kids already, the youngest being 6 years old, so he's way older than her. And they talk about like him taking her to bed and she just cries every time, and it's really upsetting. And you think the father is not a bad person, he's not an abuser, but that's just how it was. And there's a lot of talk about the woman's place, which is you either go to a convent and you marry, and that's your 2 options, and it kind of were your only options back then. So it's really true to that. I think Vasya really wants to break the mold, and she breaks the mold a bit in this book, but I think it's going to go even further in the sequel and after the sequel. But there is quite a lot of that uncomfortableness around that, and everyone just kind of having hots for people they shouldn't have. Like her sister, I think, got married when she was 14 years old, and I know that was normal back then, so I'm not saying like, oh, the author advocates for this. I'm just saying it's there, so if it makes you uncomfortable, maybe just be careful. There's like a very, very gentle hint of romance with a character that's like one of those like really ancient creatures, and it was very similar in the Uprooted actually, because Wizard in there, he's like ancient or like whatever, like he's not ancient, but he's like hundreds of years old and he doesn't age. So there was an age gap there, and there's kind of an age gap here. Some people have the issue of like a vampire getting with like a 16-year-old because you're this ancient creature, what you have to do with teenagers. And it's kind of similar in this. I think both of them, like the main character in here, maybe he's like 16 maybe, and then Uprooted, I don't think she was more than like 16 to 17. That doesn't really bother me because I can like suspend my disbelief and kind of understand that it's not the author saying, oh, all the old dudes should get with the teenagers. It's like an ancient creature that's lived forever, and it's kind of different rules, and it's magic. Like I can forgive that. That's not really a problem for me. Like even Edward getting with Bella, I know he's ancient or whatever, but like I know he's 100 years old, but at the same time, he's a vampire. Like there are no vampires either, you know what I mean? You're either okay with it or you're not okay. It's either a problem for you or it's not. And for me, it's not really a problem, but if it's a problem for you, both of those books had like an ancient creature falling for a 16-year-old, so I think that's everything I wanted to talk about. I just wanted to say, if this book sounds at all interesting, and I loved it so much, so I would highly recommend it. There's gonna be a read along for the series, so if you follow Meg from Meg with Books, she's having a whole read along. I think they're reading the first book November, I think the second book December, and third book in January. So I'm actually gonna skip the November, but I'm gonna continue with them for December and January. I'm gonna read the second and third. So if you guys want to join them and you want to read this book, have a chat with me or whatever, like hit me up on Twitter or hit me up in here. Let's have a chat once you do read it, and then we can continue this series together. I'm gonna leave all the information to the readathon down in the description if you guys want to check it out. I guess that's it for the vlog. I've read 3 books: Uprooted, Witcher, and The Bird and the Nightingale, and I gave Uprooted and The Bird and the Nightingale both 5 stars, and The Witcher was like 3.5 stars, but I still really enjoyed it. So this vlog was an absolute success. I just found some of my all-time favorites. This just made me so happy. I mean, I really put a lot of work into editing. It just made me really happy. I think reading books that represent your culture, if it's not the super mainstream culture, it's really exciting. It's something that you don't experience a lot, and then it just feels like home, especially for someone who, like, I moved to England, so I don't live in Poland anymore, but seeing my culture and my folk tales and Baba Yaga and the Polish words just slid in, and Polish names just slid into like a mainstream story that found success, because both Uprooted and The Bear and the Nightingale are such well-loved popular books just on a wider scale. That means so much. And like I said, The Witcher, I feel like that's, even before I read the book or watched the TV series and I didn't really know what it's about, I just was so in awe of how everyone loved it, how popular the games were. It just felt amazing because someone saw my culture and appreciated it. So that's all to say that I think the fact that we're getting more and more diverse stories from authors who never had an opportunity to tell their story. I feel like Eastern European isn't like very marginalized culture at all, but there's so many other cultures that have not been able to tell their stories on the large scale markets in international markets, because of course in the home markets like Polish books, there are loads of Polish books in Poland that talk about Polish culture, but on the worldwide English speaking market there's just an explosion of like North African, South African, Middle Eastern, Asian based folklore myth or culture based stories just getting out into the world and getting mainstream popularity, and I just think that's absolutely amazing. And I'm really happy if you picked up a book and you felt as home as I felt reading all of these. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'm sorry if I got soppy at the end and the video is probably quite long, but I'm really enjoying doing these vlogs. I know that they're not getting like anywhere near decent views, like 30 views. Thank you to the 2 people watching till the end of the video. This really means so much to me, and if you could like and subscribe and comment, that would help you so much, because maybe then more people can see this video. But that's it from me, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!